It was meant to be an evening filled with laughter and nostalgia on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Samuel L. Jackson, the acclaimed Hollywood icon known for his commanding presence and razor-sharp wit, had been invited to promote his latest film, an intense crime thriller that had already begun to generate critical buzz. The set was alive with energy. Audience members clapped, cheered, and even rose to their feet when Jackson entered, dressed impeccably in a dark suit that shimmered under the studio lights. He smiled, waved to the crowd, and took his seat across from Colbert, appearing calm and composed. Colbert began in his usual fashion, blending charm and humor with a touch of provocation. Samuel L. Jackson, ladies and gentlemen, the man whose voice could probably stop a hurricane, he quipped, earning a burst of laughter. Jackson smiled politely, acknowledging the jest with a nod. I suppose that would make me useful during storm season, he replied dryly, drawing another round of applause. The exchange began lightly enough, but Colbert's teasing soon took on a sharper edge. You've made a career out of yelling at people, Colbert continued, his grin widening. Do you ever whisper at home, or is your wife just used to being shouted awake? The audience laughed again, but Jackson's expression changed almost imperceptibly. His smile thinned, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. I only raise my voice when people say something foolish, he said evenly, his tone firm but restrained. The response drew nervous laughter from the audience, who could sense the subtle tension building between the two men. Colbert pressed on, perhaps misreading the atmosphere. Come on, Sam, he said, leaning forward. You've been the angry guy in Pulp Fiction, the furious boss in The Avengers, the shouting detective, the yelling hitman. Don't you think you might have found your natural habitat? The crowd chuckled again, but Jackson did not. He sat still, his posture straightening as he turned his gaze directly toward Colbert. You're saying I'm angry because I play angry? He asked quietly. You think I'm not acting, Stephen? Colbert attempted to keep the tone playful, but his response lacked tact. No, of course you're acting, he said with a laugh. I just mean, well, you play it so convincingly that people might think it comes a little naturally. The laughter in the audience faltered. The silence that followed seemed to stretch longer than it should have. Jackson let out a slow breath, his voice lowering to a steady rumble. You've got to understand something, he said. I play characters that have passion, power, anger, joy, all of it. But when someone assumes that's who I am, that's when it stops being funny. Colbert tried to steer the conversation back toward humor. I didn't mean any offense, he said lightly. I just thought it was an interesting observation. Jackson leaned forward slightly. You're not the first one to make it. But here's the thing, when a white actor plays intense roles, he's called versatile. When I do it, I'm called angry. Maybe think about that before you make it into a joke. The audience erupted in applause, this time not out of laughter, but respect. Colbert's smile faltered. He seemed uncertain whether to continue the segment or end it. Hey, I was just teasing, he said softly, but the moment for levity had passed. Jackson gave a short, sharp laugh. Yeah, I've been teased like that my whole life. Doesn't feel any funnier now. Colbert looked toward his producers, perhaps hoping for a cue, but Jackson was already shifting in his chair. I came here to talk about a film, Jackson continued, not to sit here and be reduced to a stereotype. The words carried the weight of decades of experience, and the studio had fallen utterly silent. The host tried one final attempt to recover the tone of the show. Come on, Sam, we're all friends here. Jackson interrupted, his voice booming across the studio. Friends don't disguise insults as jokes. He stood up, his expression firm, and removed his microphone. I'm not your punchline, Stephen. Not tonight. A collective gasp filled the room. The production crew, clearly uncertain whether the exchange was real or rehearsed, scrambled behind the cameras. One producer signaled frantically for a commercial break, but Jackson was already walking toward the curtain. The studio lights caught the edge of his jacket as he turned briefly toward the audience, offered a brief nod, and disappeared backstage. The applause never came. The air in the studio was heavy with disbelief. Colbert sat motionless for a moment, staring at the space where Jackson had stood. Then, forcing a strained smile, he turned to the camera and said, well, that was something you don't see every night. The audience laughed nervously, unsure whether to follow his lead. Behind the scenes, however, there was no laughter. Crew members rushed to calm the situation, but the damage had already been done. Jackson's abrupt departure had left an unmistakable mark, one that would soon spill far beyond the studio walls, the moment Samuel L. Jackson disappeared behind the curtain, chaos erupted backstage at the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Producers scrambled from every direction, headsets buzzing with urgent chatter. "Get him back," one shouted. "We can't air it like that." But Jackson wasn't waiting around. He moved quickly down the corridor, his stride long and determined, his publicist trailing behind, trying to reason with him. "Sam, please, just give them 5 minutes to smooth this out," she urged. He stopped briefly, turned to her, and said firmly, "I've spent a lifetime smoothing things out for people who cross the line. Not this time." Inside the studio, Colbert sat frozen, unsure how to move forward. The cameras had cut to commercial, but the audience was abuzz, whispering and glancing around. Some thought it had been scripted, a bit for shock value, but others knew from the look on Jackson's face that it was real. When the broadcast resumed, Colbert forced a light laugh, his voice slightly shaky. "Well, folks, sometimes our guests surprise us. That's live television for you." The audience gave a polite chuckle, but the unease was palpable. Backstage, Jackson's assistant was on the phone with CBS executives before the actor even reached the exit. "He's leaving the building," she said. "And no, he's not coming back for the post-segment wrap-up." The studio security guard held the door for Jackson, who stepped into the cool New York night, still visibly fuming. "They always think they can poke fun until they hit a nerve," he muttered. "Then it's all, oh, calm down, it was just a joke." "I'm done laughing at that." By the time Jackson got into his car, the internet was already on fire. A few audience members had secretly recorded the confrontation on their phones, and clips were appearing on social media within minutes. One video posted to X, formerly Twitter, was captioned, "Samuel L. Jackson just walked off Colbert's show after being disrespected on air. This was wild." It amassed hundreds of thousands of views within an hour. Hashtag Samuel L. Jackson, hashtag Colbert Clash, and hashtag Late Show Meltdown trended worldwide. Fans flooded the comments with support for Jackson. "Good for him," one wrote. "He's been in this industry long enough not to tolerate microaggressions disguised as jokes." Another said, "Colbert crossed a line, you don't mock someone's legacy and call it comedy." Still, some viewers defended the host, arguing that Jackson had overreacted. "Colbert jokes with everyone," one user posted. "That's literally his job." By morning, the entertainment world was buzzing. Every major outlet had picked up the story. Variety, Rolling Stone, The Hollywood Reporter, all carried headlines dissecting the Samuel L. Jackson-Stephen Colbert clash. CBS issued a brief statement. The Late Show values its guests and regrets that last night's interview with Mr. Jackson ended unexpectedly due to a misunderstanding. But Jackson's team quickly followed with a sharper response. "Mr. Jackson stands by his decision to leave. He will not tolerate disrespect disguised as humor, particularly when it undermines decades of hard work and integrity." Behind closed doors, Colbert reportedly reached out to apologize personally. A source close to the show revealed that he left a voicemail saying, "Sam, I'm sorry. I went too far. You're right, I should have handled it better." But when Jackson's assistant relayed the message, he shook his head. "Tell him I said thanks for the call," Jackson replied. "But I meant what I said on that stage." In the following days, celebrities weighed in. Jamie Foxx tweeted, "You don't mess with Sam Jackson. That man's earned his respect 100 times over." Viola Davis posted a simple but powerful message. "Every black actor knows that moment, the one where the joke goes too far. Proud of Sam for standing up." Even Denzel Washington, typically reserved about industry drama, commented in an interview, "Samuel's always been about dignity. You can't joke about someone's identity and expect them to smile for the cameras." Meanwhile, The Late Show faced its own reckoning. The clip from the interview, despite being scrubbed from official CBS uploads, spread across every social platform imaginable. Fans accused the network of censorship. Others demanded that Colbert address it on air. 2 nights later, he did. Sitting at his desk, Colbert took a deep breath and said, "Last week, I made a joke that didn't land, and I unintentionally disrespected one of the greatest actors of our time. Samuel L. Jackson, if you're watching, I'm sorry. You deserve better." It was a rare moment of humility from the usually unflappable host, and though it earned applause from the live audience, Jackson didn't respond publicly. Instead, he moved on. When a reporter asked him about the incident while he was filming in Atlanta, Jackson smirked. "I said what needed to be said. People can take it however they want. I don't do fake smiles for the cameras. In the weeks that followed, the incident sparked a broader discussion in Hollywood about humor, respect, and the fine line between teasing and belittling. Talk shows across the country debated whether comedians had grown too comfortable making character-based jokes about actors of color. For Jackson, though, the episode only added to his legendary persona, the man who never held his tongue, on or off screen. Fans began calling it the Colbert moment, a defining display of his refusal to compromise dignity for entertainment. Months later, when asked if he'd ever appear on The Late Show again, Jackson laughed and said, "Only if Stephen lets me write the jokes." It was classic Samuel L. Jackson, unapologetic, fearless, and entirely in control of his story.